Hello, this is Molly Reamer with 30 Days of Goddess and the Goddess Magic Community with this month's Goddess Guidance Club video. We are honoring Ariadne this month. Our theme is power. And so if you are a member of the Goddess Magic Community on Patreon, the link to that is below. You will receive your Ariadne Goddess Guidance Club packet, which you can assemble into a little inspiration set, a bookmark, as well as mini prayer booklet. This one isn't sewed together yet, but it's a fun little extra mini devotional prayer booklet and a set of affirmation stickers, as well as our summer renewal guidebook and our snapshot cards for this month's practice. So lots of good stuff available for you as a member of that community. But anyway, so I welcome you to join. But even if not, I would still like to share some information with you about Ariadne as we explore her this month. And so Ariadne is an ancient Mesopotamian creation goddess who was later folded into the Greek myth of the Minotaur in the labyrinth. So when we hear the Greek story, she is a human who's half sister of the Minotaur, and then she leads the hero through the labyrinth. But in the theory is that she was an older creation goddess who was folded into that Greek story. A lot of times, and I've said this in other videos this year, a lot of times when we see a woman or a goddess or a female of some kind of power in a Greek story who's been kind of reduced down to one aspect, it's usually because she's an older goddess who's being supplanted by a later story. Anyway, she's known as a guardian and guide and is associated with wisdom, love, courage, spinning, and fiber arts. A trusted companion on our unique journeys or pilgrimages on our personal sacred paths, we can follow Ariadne's thread through the sometimes difficult walk to the center of the labyrinth, to the heart of ourselves, and to our own soul's truth. I really feel a strong connection with Ariadne, and I have a lot that I could say about her. So if you follow along with my weekly divination videos, we'll go ahead and explore more about her as the month unfolds. But as we start today, I would love to share with you a poem from Ariadne's Thread, the classic by Shekhinah Mountainwater. This is where woman runes were introduced. This is a book that I've used with personal use as a study guide with small groups of friends once in 2016 or throughout the course of a year in 2016, and then now currently as well. So I want to start with this poem before we talk a little bit more about Ariadne. In the deepening twilight she stands just inside the entrance to her cave, beckoning. Come, she softly calls, follow me. But I am afraid, you tell her. I fear I will be lost in there, and they say there are minotaurs. You peer into the labyrinth behind her, the twisting passages winding away to nothing. Out here, the familiar world crashes on. The sea of sexism, the city of doom. She lifts her proud, dark gaze in scorn. 'Tis there one meets the minotaur. In the shadow gleams her crescent crown. A snake stirs on her breast, and in her hand she holds the thread, unraveling a strand and offering. Will you come, oh my sister? Will you come? So there is so much that we could say about her, and I look at her, especially in the context of our theme with power, about accessing our own power, about finding our way back through the labyrinth of everything we have lost and finding our way back to the power that resides there. I had shared some poems in the guidebook and in the longer thematic July video about that sensation of picking up the silver thread with my friends and exploring with her. But basically, here's a little bit more information from the Ariadne's Thread book. Okay, so going a little bit more in depth about Ariadne's story and the multiple layers of meanings for it from Ariadne's Thread. I wanted to switch to front view because I was talking too much just looking at the papers, and it makes more sense to be physically more present. So as I mentioned, when we have there's different ways of perceiving Ariadne, goddess or human woman, mortal or divine. And basically that's when we trace that thread, when we trace her thread, we find there's an older story there and there's hidden power. And that's why she connects to our theme theme of power. So Ariadne is best known for providing guidance through the mysterious temple maze of ancient Crete, where she presided as a priestess. Her famous thread, her silver thread, was the means by which seekers could find their way safely in and out of the labyrinth. The maze of the labyrinth can be understood on many levels. Patriarchal myth has taught us to view it as a frightening place, built to imprison the dangerous Minotaur who fed upon innocent youths and maidens. The conquering hero Theseus is then the hero of the story who saves Crete and liberates Crete from the Minotaur. Assisted by Ariadne and her magic ball of thread, she instructed him to place it on the ground. Upon entering the labyrinth, the ball would roll and unwind itself and lead him to the central chamber. To get back out, he had only to pick up the thread and rewind it, following the strand back to the entrance. So in the story, Theseus successfully penetrated the maze, slew the monster, then fled Crete with Ariadne, his lover and promised bride, whom he later abandoned on a nearby island. Stories like this are curiously compelling, even when we don't fully comprehend them. That's because they contain images that are powerful and that reach to something deep inside us. And I think because we sense there's an older story underneath that has more power and we want to know more. So they create this curiosity. So the labyrinth, the thread, the priestess, the monster, those things are very old ideas that go back into the shadows of prehistory. To unravel their meanings is a labyrinthine journey in itself. In the first Theseus strand, Ariadne is the priestess and princess, the daughter of King Minos, a mortal woman of historic myth. Her primary role is a supporter in the hero's journey rather than an agent of her own fate or her own destiny, and she's used when needed and then discarded in the end. But in the next unraveling, we discover Ariadne, still mortal, still human, but with a pivotal part to play in the historical shift on Crete from matriarchy to patriarchy. And so the essentially like a representation of the shifting of the balance of power from more goddess-oriented matriarchal type of religions and societal structures as well into the conquering patriarchal model. And of course, there's lots of different interpretations here. There's some questions about the accuracy of those types of, whether there was ever, true matriarchy, or whether women were just more valued, or people and priestesses were more valued and then they kind of fell in power, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots. I'm not getting into complicated archaeology right here. We're using this kind of it can be used as a metaphor for the transition of power in ancient times between goddess honoring cultures and cultures that were less goddess oriented and were less valuing of women as well. And so, so in this view, the maze is now a dance floor fashioned by the clever magician, I don't remember how to say his name, Daedalus. That's not quite right. Where Ariadne performs the ritual movements of Cretan spring ceremonies. We see Minos deliberately rewriting the liturgies of these rites, changing the goddesses to gods and forcing the priestesses to mouth new words before the people. Robert Graves then unwinds the next strand in the white goddess in the Greek myths, and here the labyrinth is the battleground where one hero slays another. Graves shows a mixed view of Ariadne as both mortal and divine, but they're always seen through the eyes of men and their gods. As a matriarchal princess, the human Ariadne is representative of the triple goddess who weds the victorious hero, thus bestowing upon him the status of sacred king. So in the Graves interpretation, he says the Minotaur is really an old matriarchal moon bull, beloved of the goddess, who's sacrificed each year for the fertility of the earth. And so in the end, we have to turn back to feminist scholars like Monica Shu, Barbara Moore, Barbara Walker, Patricia Monahan, who take us back to a further beginning. And again, remembering that these stories are all constructed from very small pieces of evidence. And so people like to discount feminist interpretations as saying they're kind of somehow fantastical, but then they'll seize on a very small shard of myth and accept that as truth when it reinforces a patriarchal worldview. So you have to take these kinds of things with a grain of salt. So from here, from their perspective, we see that Ariadne is the goddess herself. Most holy, high, fruitful mother of barley are the original meanings of her beautiful name. Her rites are peaceful, concerned with cycles of body, mind, and spirit. She's like Persephone, the dark maiden, this cycle of growth and decay, fate of the grain, giver of life, receiver of souls at death. The labyrinth is her own body, the place of her mysteries, the cave and womb of initiation. And we find the spiraling labyrinth in pre-patriarchal cultures around the world, the Hopis in the American Southwest, the Celtic peoples in Britain, these spiral paths, the Newgrange temple stone, like we find these spiral paths in various settings. That's what inspired us with our Newgrange goddess, is those spiraling paths. And so that's the spiraling path is an ancient symbol. And the stories always tell of a numinous woman who presides at sacred sites. With her guidance, the seeker travels through the labyrinth to the spirit world and back again, learning lessons of ecstasy, transformation, and immortality. The thread that guides us in and out is the same thread woven, spun, and cut by the goddesses of fate, makers and unmakers of destiny. It's the same thread pulled from the body of Spider-Woman in Hopi myth, with which she wove the universe, and which she attaches to the crown chakras of all her children to keep us connected to her. It's the umbilical cord of birth and rebirth, from the womb to the tomb and back again. The monster is not a monster, but the still heart center that people have so long suppressed and feared, that inner knowing, that chamber within that doesn't need patriarchal control, that doesn't need to be dominated and controlled. Like the wheeling of the heavens, the twisting of serpents, the convolutions of our brain, the labyrinth unfolds and folds again upon itself, and all the meanings we hear about it are true. Back and back it goes, taking us into history, into herstory, into myth, into time, into death, into birth, into the goddess, and into our deepest selves. If we can keep our hold upon the thread, it will lead us back in and out again as we traverse corridor upon corridor, labyrinth upon labyrinth, outwards and outwards, till we have found spiritual rebirth or regrowth or nurturance, and have escaped at last the tangled web of patriarchy. And so she also points out that in ancient Mesopotamia and in ancient Crete, in the temples where there's bulls on the walls in the temples and the chambers in ancient Crete, in this world where Ariadne was first found, the original rites there, this was a gentle world. There were no implements of war found among the ruins, only tools, art, and pottery. So maybe there's a connection between goddess reverence and social peace, and this can be something that we can follow when we pick up Ariadne's thread as well. So may she inspire you to access your own power and to trace those many threads. Follow that labyrinth of your own heart, of your own soul, but also follow those many threads, unwinding those threads of indoctrination, enculturation, and remembering that those patriarchal stories are stories too, myths, and we can make a new meaning. We can follow a new thread. We can pick up Ariadne's thread and follow it once more. So I'm going to go ahead and end with her poem, Listen, I find my own way. My truth sings in my bones. I chart my own course. I dance with freedom. I have learned to walk alone. From challenge and creation, my crown of stars is born. And just acknowledging that I do see I have this little gray hair that's like unruly sticking off of my head right now. So if that bothers you, I'm sorry, I see it too. But maybe that is my silver thread guiding my way. Thank you so much for being here. Keep living your magic. Bye-bye.